progress.
Hi, and welcome to Hayter Institute. My name's Helen, and I'm one of the trainers here at Institute at Hayter, and I teach mental health, community services, and youth work. Tonight, I'm here to introduce the induction learner program for youth work. So let's begin by doing the acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Hayter Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nations people and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. Now, this is what it will look like when you go into your classes each week. We do what we call housekeeping, and that's about general accepted behaviours and a list of like an agenda of things that we do and expectations. So we have our cameras on and our microphones on mute. So that's when your trainer is presenting. They can present clearly and without stopping and starting all the time and making time then for questions. You can also use what we call the class participation, the hand emoji, and your trainer will let you know how they work with that. Usually there are 2 break times at 7 and 8 p.m. for 10 minutes, and some classes like to put them into 20-minute blocks. We also make sure that we have respectful relationships. Our language is clear and we're mindful of our words and respectful of the opinion of others. And we are listeners and we are learners in all of this together. No smoking or vaping on screen. We would not do that to you, so please don't disrespect us by doing that on screen. If you need to, you're all adult learners, you turn your screen off. Some of the content might have trigger warnings with it. So some of the content could have something that gives you an adverse reaction. And there are links in your learner handbook to reach out to for support. And we also encourage you to make sure that you do activities that give you energy and make you feel renewed and rejuvenated each week, just so you're ready for learning, you're ready for life. Also, too, respectful language is leaving our biases aside, and that is our duty of care. In this industry, it's really important that we practice inclusiveness and we're careful of our language and the way we say things. So assessments, let's have a look at the types. You have quizzes, studies, projects, role plays and practical assessments. So some role plays will need to be done live in front of a trainer, and that will be written on your assessment, and it's in red letters when you need a trainer to view you live. Other role plays can be done with your family, your peers or colleagues. And if you need help finding other participants, please let your trainer know. If your course has work placement component, this will be completed from when you have finished at least 50% of your learning. And if you work in a suitable service, you can let your trainer know and you might be able to speak to the placement officer and talk about the options there for you to be supervised in that time. So we aim to look at marking your assessments within a 48-hour turnaround. That is business hours as well. So we are open from 9 till 9, so that's a 12-hour turnaround. So for any assessments marked non-satisfactory as well, we'll you will get adequate feedback from the marker, and that will guide you in your next steps of how to respond to that. If you do need help, you can reach out to your trainer or to LSO at haiderinstitute.edu.au. Of course, if you're doing reports and you're needing to reference, please make sure that you do that. You can ask your trainer about what style of referencing they would prefer. And if you need an extension due to any sort of life event that is happening for you, please reach out to your trainer. If you need any help with your assessments and tasks or role plays, you can book what we call an LSM, which is a learning support meeting. And this can be done with trainers across the week. And that is done by emailing https://calendly.com trainer bookings. When you come to this site, you can actually have a look at the different areas of learning, like community services, youth work, mental health, and you can click in those and get a trainer across the board. HADA is a rolling intake. So the courses at HADA are designed with an approach that you can join and start at the beginning of any new unit. That means when you come in, you're alongside everybody else, no matter how long they've been here, we're all new to that module. So it's all starting that module together. And if you also need recognition of prior learning when you're starting your course, please let the intake officers know that. And if there's any need for any sort of credit transfers, also notify that you might already have some of those at the time that you sign. So connecting with learning support team. If you have issues with accessing your Accelerate Learner portal, accessing your assessments there, anything to do with IT related, trying to get into a class, you can email lso@haiderinstitute.edu.au. Role plays and recordings, we've put together a guide for learners with tips on how to record and upload your videos. Now, there is one link where we have two trainers discussing what we would want to see done in a role play. And we're not looking for acting skills. We're looking for people who are following the criteria and including the language that we're looking for the industry and how you manage that and along with your legal and ethical requirements. And there's also a video there link that you can also use to help you upload your videos and your recordings, and that is in your learner portal under resources. So there's plenty of support here at HADA, and we're a safe learning environment, and we can't change some of the content that may have adverse reactions for you. So please reach out to your trainer and also check into your learner handbook, because there is a list of information there around support services and contact numbers to call if you're feeling overwhelmed or triggered by these. So normalizing the feelings of learning, it can be overwhelming when we first start. Of course, we can be stressed. We're wanting to do our best. We're anxious how we're going to fill it into our week. Have I taken off more than I could do before? But that all comes along with part of the learning, and you're not knowing yet. So step into it, reach out for support. We'll be there to support you along the way. And enjoy your learning. Thanks for listening. So welcome everybody to the first session for CHCYTH015, support young people to create opportunities in their lives. I'm standing in for Vicky tonight. My name's Helen, and I'm one of the trainers for community services and mental health. And Vicky will be back next week. And I hope you all enjoy the class. So to start with, let's just do the acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we work, study and live, and pay our respects to elders past, present and future. We celebrate their stories, culture and traditions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders of all communities who also work and live on this land. So tonight we're looking at the foundations of youth work, how we support that growth and change for young people. What is actually active listening when we're working with young people, and the difference in that to actually active listening in different areas, and identifying relationships between issues and social structures and respecting cultural interactions. So let's have a look at youth-centred practice. So for youth-centred practice, the concepts that puts young people and their interests first, it's around that, it's a very relational practice when youth work, and it's very much about working alongside the person. We talk about stepping and walking side by side with people in leadership, but in youth work, it really is side by side work. You're stepping in the same directions with young people, helping guide them. And you want to help let them have ownership of the space that you're working in. That's really important to have. Where do I fit in? How do I belong? And think about when you actually help somebody feel a part of that leadership with you, a part of a program, an activity, you'd be surprised the differences it makes in helping them step up and be that person in an active role. And that's all great for their development and growth. So my background is from youth work in high schools, working with disengaged youth and teaching vet training courses in a centre, a high school centre in Queensland. And we did a lot of community service work for the young people that were not achieving at school or couldn't assimilate to that school situation, that restraining classroom environment for some people who were actually really living tough. The broken relationships, broken families, homelessness, and the struggles of going through that change of life for them as well at that life stage. And what happened was we actually created community programs for young people to go out and work in and be work skilled. From there, that ownership of those programs and activities saw diamonds in the rough born, and they got to shine to lead different practices, processes, group implementations, and create things in the community. So they actually created a sensory garden for an aged care centre, a memorial garden for the some young people that had passed away in the district we were in. They actually took ownership of gardens at a shopping centre and redid the gardens with the help of TAFE, teaching them around plants and gardening techniques. We actually painted half a building block at the school in geometrical shapes, helped by Bunnings and Dulux paints. And they come out and they taught them all the skills. So we had to find them a way to be accredited for this work that they were doing, because whilst they were working, improving their own lives, they were supporting others. So we brought in a Cert III in active volunteering, which covered the work around first aid, crisis intervention in communities. This crew of young people went out and helped after the floods in Brisbane. the last lot of floods we had. They were able to lead groups of people through their training. These were the ones that the school said they're disengaged, they'll be leaving soon. And we were like, no, they have a right to be here. Let's find a space how they can learn. Let's find a way for them to learn their way. And it was about doing. And the social and emotional things for young people are often overlooked in school sectors. And it's getting better, but that's where we were coming from, trying to build social, emotional, and education all in one. The changes that you can give somebody by walking side by side with them, giving them an active role, teaching them how to have decision-making processes, getting them to generate ideas and having an opinion and showing them that that's valued is crucial to their growth. Their opinions matter. Building up respect and inclusion. And it's interesting to watch other older people come in to different areas and expect respect straight away. Whereas for a lot of young people are saying, well, how are you respecting me and how are you helping me respect you if you're not respecting me and my space as well? And that's what I found in that inclusion, that youth-centered practice, promoting that respectful, inclusive environment adds the diversity to what you're doing. It's about people's experiences, valuing their perspectives, creating a space where safe expression can be done. And when I say safe expression, that's about talking about that D&M, as they call it, the deep emotional work. Sometimes it's not about how big that problem is. It's about who will I share it with? Who will I trust? And you have to work for that. And that's about showing them how we're there to be there to help them in their space. We're hands-on. We're actively building, helping them problem solve. And the more they can learn those skills from us, the more trust can happen. Because when we do that, the adaptability and the flexibility that can happen to programs that you're in, you can actually add more breadth to a program when young people start to take ownership for how that's even flowing. What can they include in that? How can they adjust things to make it more work for them? But then all of a sudden, those changes create other opportunities. Leadership for young people also helps about taking on responsibility, that R word. And that R word can be quite hard work. The R word, the responsibility for something. And often it's not wanting to be responsible for self. If they're taught to be responsible for something else, then they can learn responsibility for themselves and their actions. So you foster that responsibility, you foster that role, you support that role, you help build that confidence in that role, and what we call give a sense of agency. Hi, Olivia. My name's Helen. I'm just standing in for Vicky tonight. She's been called away to another class. Welcome.
Okay. Hi, Helen.
So the human rights are inherent to all human beings, regardless of race, nationality, language, religion. Everyone is entitled to those rights without discrimination. Can I ask a question? Do you think that really happens? Anyone? Do you really think all these human rights happen for young people in today's society?
No, not all the time, and not all the same ones.
Yes, and it's hard to be able to activate all those human rights at once, because what I found is that depending on society, depending on the environment, what's happening, funding, everything, a lot of these human rights don't happen in everyday work because of the complexity of somebody's life and the system that you might work in. We can try really hard to make sure that these human rights happen. But in reality, it's hard to make sure that we are activating these. We can be guided by these for our practice, for sure. And that's about the rights for young people to have that freedom, expression, education. But often that is hard because of their lives and what they're going through and the inequality for many people. And it's always good to think about how are we trying to uphold those human rights for young people as well. How are we a voice for that? Because the inequality for some people to be able to access service is very vast in different areas, especially when you start going towards regional and remote areas and very densely populated city areas. And the right to access service is often blocked and has a barrier. Could be due to distance, could be due to transport, could be due to not being well enough to even attend certain areas, especially if they're living rough. Our practice here is to bring around our best practice and care and support for young people and show them that inequality is not going to be a barrier here, because they have a right to service, and we supply the youth-centered practice that's evidence-based. It's drawing on research and practices. Just think of the rich information that comes from Vicky and her experiences in youth work and all the central support systems that she works within. Her best practices are from knowledge and research and practice and experience. That's what you can build up, because that'll bring on a level of stability in your framework that you work by. You then build a familiarity in the lives of young people from that, because it's a consistent approach that you keep bringing up to the standards. Because to support young people to change their lives, you have those skills to help guide that. They have a right to change. You have those skills to help them have that right. When we're talking around the rights of young people, dignity of risk is so crucial in youth work. Has anybody got a definition of dignity of risk?
Is it kind of like where the client decides they're going to do something that quite possibly will have negative effects but won't seriously harm them?
You're very, very close, very, very close. And it often mightn't have a negative effect, but it could be risky for them to do. So I suppose in that sense, you could say that's the negative part of it, the risk. But we, as the worker, can give them as much knowledge about that, and they can still make that choice. And then we work with that. We honour that because that's their choice. We inform them of all the risks, of all the information that we can give about it as well. Because it could be about saying, no, I'm not going to go ahead with that. Whereas somebody saying this is the best outcome for you to follow, to do. So by simply saying no, that means they're not ready. That's also a dignity of risk to be able to support. And for every young people, having the right to make their choices about their own lives naturally has some sort of level of risk, because that will recognise their own autonomy and their self-determination. So we have a big job here around our duty of care with dignity of risk in youth work, because the risks that some people might want to take, like you say, Olivia, could be quite risky and dangerous for them. If we've armed them with all the information, how are we balancing safety with risk? We have to show them, if we can, what that balance is like. Then if you're putting over restrictive measures in place from the start, that'll make them go the other way totally. Because restrictive feels strangling. That means you're telling me I can't do it. You're holding me back. You're disrespecting somebody's dignity by doing that. And if we give them as much information as we can they start to formulate a balance of risk and action here? And that's where our discussion comes in. Opening up that dialogue, giving them that agency, getting their points of view on something. How will this look if you do it this way? If you follow what you want to do, what do you think the outcome will be? Let them explore that. And if it's still what I want to do, you know they've got an informed choice. You might have to even do risk assessments around those for certain types of activities that they might want to do. Because it's a real individual approach coming from you, the worker, in that to have access to relevant information and support, for someone wanting to be willing to explore that, can often lead to a positive outcome. When you embrace the dignity of risk in your practice for an individual, it allows them to engage in activities that often can give fulfillment as well and a sense of purpose. It's daring to do something different that I didn't think that I could fit into. That comes out from them. I didn't think I could do it, but I did, and I didn't want to be told I was not going to do it either. So when you give them access to information, this is how you can embrace that dignity for them, that dignity of choice. Because as workers, the ethical and the legal considerations here, allowing somebody to just go off and do something really risky without any knowledge and understanding of that, our duty of care has not happened then. So we have to weigh up those risks and make sure we've given as much information as possible determining what the risks are, because you have that person's well-being there. And when you provide the guidance, information, assistance, you're respecting that individual choice. Let me put it this way. Would you want somebody telling you what you can and cannot do? How do you react to that? How would you like to be told that you cannot go to places that you want to go to, or you're given barriers to those? It makes you feel disrespected. And would you want to be in a place where you're not respected? No. So then the young people will go away from that because we're not listening. The simple part of being in this space of dignity of risk is holding that space and listening to the young person. Think about the approach you're going to work with them, but think about the balance of respect here and valuing of each person. It's not us up here and them down here. It's like this. We're standing side by side with them. We've got information to share. We've got guidance to share. We're not in the telling profession. We're here to share information to help you step up and be able to make choices for your own well-being. Individual choice here. All right. We're going to do an activity here, and it's around the Youth Affairs Council of Victoria, and it's around a code of ethical practices here. And I'm just going to copy and paste this link. It's not going to let me do it. There we go. Right, so there's the link to the code of ethical practice. I won't make you go to breakout rooms, but I'll ask first, do you like to work in breakout rooms?
Yes.
Yep, okay. All right, well, let's break this into 2 groups, and you'll have a set of questions to explore. So if you can bring up this PDF on the code of ethical practice, I'm now going to put in some questions for you to explore, and then we'll bring that back to the group, and then we'll share and discuss that. So group 1, you are researching the code of conduct. What is it used for? How does it guide your practice? And what are the principles of ethical practice? Now, this PDF is really easy to navigate. It's like one thing after another, so it's quite easy to work through. So group 2, you're going to look at sorry, I'm just cutting and pasting here. Group 2. What human rights are in place for young people in the guide for youth practice? And I would want you to look at professional boundaries. What are they? Are they actually legally binding? Why do they have the boundaries in place? And how would you implement these into your practice? Even if you have one suggestion on how you could implement that into your practice. When you get into the professional boundaries, you will read why they are there. Then you'll understand how you could implement that into your practice. So let me just stop share there. And I'm just going to forgot to press record, didn't I? All that great work. All right. Roles, boundaries, and responsibilities. We were just talking around the boundaries and obligations around youth work. Your other side of the legal and ethical parts of your work is around your professional integrity and how you're following the organisational policies and procedures here as well. Really crucial that you understand when you get onboarded onto an organisation, what these policies and procedures expect you to do. How are you going to make sure that you're engaging that client as the primary person that you're working with? What values and mission statement does the organisation go by which they would expect you to be working by? Your non-discriminatory practice. You're working with fairness, equitable practice. Again, equity across the board, access to everything. But there are limitations to what you can do as well. And that's around the boundaries, around what Olivia was talking about in that. Making sure you don't step across those lines. And often there'll be one or two situations where you feel that the only option you might have is to take somebody home because they're desperate at that moment. That's going across the boundary. Sometimes that desperation in trying to find something late in the day, going into dark, where can you get them a safe space to stay? Nobody's answering the services. The crisis centres have no space. What are you going to do? And this becomes an ethical dilemma. But you cannot take the young person home to your place. You should be contacting your supervisor. If you can contact all the resources you can, are there any friends, anybody that they might be able to stay with for that night? You might even have to contact child safety to try and get some sort of emergency space. But it's quite a hard one when you are ringing up late in the day, going into dark, and trying to find a service to help somebody. The frustration, but we have to remember our boundaries here. That professional integrity that we work with. Because not all things that we do are, how can I put it? They don't all feel great to do. Some things we have to action. And sometimes there's limitations to what we can do as well because of what services other referral services can supply, what our service that we're working with can support us to do. And there can be limitations around that as well. So those roles around and boundaries around youth work. Excuse me, around that privacy and confidentiality, of course. For you to fully understand the job's requirements, it's essential for the legal things that you're bound by in working. Following the Privacy and Confidentiality Act is part of your job requirement. And this is a part of the code of ethics that you work under. So all children have a right to safe and supportive care. And they say they have a right to services. How are we making that happen when there are service limitations? So child protection has considerations relating to reporting and informing. And as a worker, for you to understand mandatory reporting practices, ensuring to the protection of that young person, finding as many support services or resources that you can for that person. And this is where you start building up your case plan for them. And you might even be doing safety plans to try and help them have a safer home environment, or finding youth housing. Often you're working with a young person, if you're case planning, around help reunification with family. Are they still under the age that they may have to be, child safety is involved as well? Don't forget, they also have rights in all of this as well. They have a right to know what's going on with this process as well. You're having to adhere to the code of ethics and the practice standards here, but don't forget to verbalize that, what you're doing with the young person that you're working with. Let them understand the steps you have to take for their safety and protection as well. And let them know the limitations of your role as well, because there are limitations to your roles, no matter where you're working. So in every state, there are legislations that apply to youth work. And the Australian Human Rights Commission Act provides guidance on upholding United Nations Convention of Rights of the Child, different to the United Nations Conventions of Rights. This is the rights of the child. There are different articles in there that relate to specifically to young people. You will also work under different frameworks of protection in every state. You will also work under a national framework of the Privacy Act 1988 right across Australia. Even though your organisations can still have different procedures around confidentiality and privacy, that is driven by law, the Privacy Act 1988 across Australia. You could also be following the Disability Discrimination Act. Now, that Discrimination Act is around the right to service as well, and not discriminating a young person because of their beliefs, actions, gender, no matter what they go on, religion, nothing. So that act is to protect them. Now, there is a national framework for protecting Australia's children, 2021 to 2031. And this act is coming in as a 10-year process to try and bring in and activate principles of practice over a 10-year period that they want in place for further down the line. And it's a process of bringing in new practices and upgrading these over that 10-year period. It's like when the government brings in new programs and they talked about there'll be no poverty by the year, what was it, 2025? That's not going to happen next year, is it? They were going to end homelessness by 2020. So some of these things are hard to work with in that there are parts of these acts that we can't totally make fully happen because of the restrictions of communities, the funding, society. It's very systemic, what they call systemic. So these things can affect how you work within these national frameworks for protecting young people. These are often ethical and legal guidelines for you. So you will learn about these when you sign on to an organisation during your intake practice. You'll have to make sure that you are following whatever the organisation actually gives you around child protection laws per state, because every state actually has a different law as well around child protection and child rights as well. Every state has something different to do with a working with children check. So as for instance, the working with children card in Victoria is a yellow card. In Queensland, it's blue card. But in Victoria, it's called working with children check. Queensland's just called blue card. And if you're working and go interstate, you have to actually have that state's card. So for me, for instance, when I went from Queensland to Victoria and worked in Victoria, but I was still based in Queensland, I had to have both cards. And they do a different police check at every state. But I could not work unless I had those. So these are your guidelines around helping you have your barriers and protections around your practices and what the industry expects you to have as well. This is by law that you have to have these. Let's have a talk about the qualities of youth work before we go on a break. Can I ask, do you have a 20-minute break? Do you put your breaks together or have two separate ones?
Varies from week to week. So, yeah, if we're cruising through, then we might sort of power on for a bit. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, consensus, can we make it to 7:30 and then have a 20-minute break?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yep. Cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Critical youth workers' qualities. Before I get into this, let me hear from you. What qualities do you think a youth worker should have?
Active listening,
Yes, yes.
active listening, have your best interest, the child's best interest, empathy.
Welcoming and approachable.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you say best interests, Mario,
Mhm.
what are you leading to?
Well, maybe just like look at the child like in a holistic view, whether like his safety would come first, to see if the environment that he's in is a suitable environment or the people that he's around, become an advocate for the child, and yeah, just like maybe like I probably would mean safety, safety first, you know, for the child, and try to be welcome and approachable, like Matt says, where um build a bond, or like I think make a trustworthiness, so then child can express themselves, and you can get to the bottom of things. Yeah, that's what I meant.
I just want to put a couple of these in.
Oh, there you go.
Some
Empathy.
really good.
You got your own box, Mario. Look at you go.
That's right.
And so you had safety, trustworthiness. What else was there, Mario?
Empathy.
Listening, wasn't it?
Yeah. Also listening. Safety, trustworthiness. Yeah.
Excellent.
An advocate as well for the child. Be a voice.
Advocate, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Some
Yep.
good suggestions there.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Being open and honest.
Relatable.
Mm.
That's pretty cool how you're making that box there for us, Helen.
That's because
How-
your
Howdy.
answers were so good, Mario.
Sorry,
No, nothing. No. Did Sammy want to
all
say
right.
something?
Relatable. Yeah, Sammy.
What was the second one?
Wasn't me, but I'll say patience.
Patient, yeah.
Oh. Can't get nowhere without patience. True, Sammy.
I think the biggest thing you can do is hold the space for someone.
What does that mean? Hold the space to someone.
So when you hold the space for someone, that environment you're in, you're helping them feel safe, welcome, included, heard, valued.
Yep.
All these things that you're talking about here
Mm-hmm.
is how you hold the space for someone.
Yep.
All these skills. So it's an invisible space. And it's like when we talk about, we have a 30 centimeter rule, don't come near that 30 centimeter space. When we're working with a young person and you're working closely with them, trying to build trust, empathy, letting them be heard, it takes you working one-on-one through all these skills here to do that. And when you do that, you're creating a space that they feel safe in and understood.
Yeah.
That's huge. So when you do that, you are holding the space. Often, that young person might want to talk. If they're having a crisis, if they're in a deep emotional state, and they just need you to be there, you don't need to talk. Often you might ask them things and they won't want to respond. Don't want to. You then sit with the silence. You are then holding the space for someone. So there's all different ways to do this, because you become that person that can offer a supportive environment. And even though this is where your active listening skills really, really come in, because you're listening to the silence. What is that silence saying to you from that young person?
Mhm.
Why is this person silent?
Mm.
What is it that's sitting on this information that could be hurting them and feeling that they can't share? They could be scared. They don't know how to navigate expressing emotions sometimes as well. So often when you hold the quiet space, you're respecting that that person wants quiet, and you can do it for a while, and then you can gently start to talk.
Mhm.
But it's a space that you step gently and respectfully in, because when you foster that environment, that belonging, that safety, can then help you then navigate some of the challenges that young person might start to talk about when they're ready to share.
Mm.
So have you heard about unconditional positive regard?
No.
So that unconditional positive regard by Rogers, who was a therapist who talked about holding the space unconditionally. So there's no conditions to how you do this. It's about why you do it. And there is no conditions coming from the young person that they have to meet to be able to have that. You do that for them. You are unconditionally regarding their moment. It's not a condition to have to talk, to share. It's not a condition that they must trust you. They must answer all your questions. It's unconditional. It's not, if you don't do this, we're not going to be able to go and do that. And you think about it, in society, we put conditions on so many things. You need to meet these criteria before you can go out and do that. You need to participate here before you can go and do that. If we started working with somebody and talked about the conditions of what you can and can't do, and then put conditions on how you were going to support them in a sense of they have to do something before you do something, not going to work. You need to work with these skills here. Unconditional acceptance, unconditional positive regard. So the positive part is around not turning anything that feels that they're pushing against the boundaries around and pushing you aside, which can often happen. But they can step back into that space when they're ready. It's unconditional, remember. They might want to step out of that space, but when they come back in, you're still there. So think about for young people that might be very transient, and they might be coming to a youth centre that you're working at, and they might turn up for 2-3 weeks in a row, and all of a sudden they've disappeared. And then they might be a month later and then start to come back in again. They might bring a whole complex load of issues with them as well. Unconditional stepping back into the space. Let's start the cycle of support again. Because often they will take off. They're trying to deal with things themselves, and often fright, flight, those responses are there. But if we hold that space and they know that door's open, that they can come back in at any time, you're the safe space. That organization, that space where you're working is the safe space. You become part of their network of consistency. Just think about, for young people, sometimes many people have given up. You're too hard to work with. Family might have moved away from that young person and disassociated themselves because of their actions. But if you keep that door open and create that consistency and follow through with your actions, it'll make a huge difference when you work with these skills here. Just stop share there. Excuse me. Welcome back. So let's have a look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs in youth work. So the hierarchy of needs model, it's around the motivation to do things and the frequency that you do them as well. So when we're working with youth work, those needs often vary and change. And the motivation to strive for some of these things actually changes in the importance. Safety becomes one of the top reasons because they're not having that in their life. And often, even though they might even come from a supportive environment, their understanding of what safety is too is important here. Understanding their own self-esteem needs. And this is where the respect comes in that you talked about before, that you identified. The respect that we're to have when working with some people, with our young people, in that, excuse me, sorry. It's about also wanting that self-respect from other people and that sense of control and the hierarchy of needs, even though it has a process here. You can see the steps it takes. That often I find flips. And there's different needs that come forward individually as well. And those physiological needs are all the basics around food, water, air, sleep, warm shelter, clothing. The safety needs are crucial here in that it's the safe psychologically and the physical. They're just as important in the hierarchy of a young person's needs. Often as we grow and get older, we see that differently. For young people, that can be the most two important things in their world that they want. Psychological safety. How am I feeling safe? How do people understand me? Why don't people get me? Why do I feel different to other people? Why do people treat me differently? Why can't they just see me? Because remember, society has expectations on people. And we do that a lot. And we do judge a lot. As a society, we do judge a lot. It'd be great to turn that into wonderment. I wonder what's that like for that person, not judge them on something. I wonder how that must feel for that person to be in that position. Not judge them because they are in that position. And when I talk about walking with wonder, that's about, how can I put this? That encompasses everything. So when walking with wonder, think about unconditional positive regard, how you are approaching something. And it's about being curious as well, what it's like for someone to be able to ask those questions as well. So you can have a deeper understanding what's going on for the young person. And understanding that often the psychological needs are greater than anything. The stress, the anxiety that some people feel. Other people use the tool to switch off and be aggressive and block it out. So then those behaviours that they show to the world are aggressive and closed off. And I don't give a hoot. Don't care what anybody else thinks. Deep down they do, but that's a barrier, a smokescreen. But if we can walk with wonder instead of walking with, well, how did they get into that position? What did they do? Which is where a lot of people will go to. How did they get into such trouble? Turn it. I wonder what happened for them to make them want to go that way. I'm interested to know that journey for you. Because the belonging and the need for acceptance is a driver in a lot of behaviours that we get presented in working with young people. As a barrier, they could be negative or it could be positive. But the need for belonging and acceptance for who they are, where they are right in this moment. When you think about society, often we don't do that easy enough. Here is this person, and the first thoughts people go to are the framework that they're in, the looks, their actions. Instead of walking with, oh, so tell me about you. What's interesting? I want to know. Not, oh, I've seen you doing this, I've seen you doing this, you've been involved in that. And having that open, positive regard helps build the self-esteem, because that need for respect when they come to work with someone like yourselves in the future, you being able to help them build that confidence and that sense of control around that part of their lives. That's a huge thing to do as a worker, as somebody who's working with young people, to be able to fill in these levels of need by what you do, your actions. Because the belonging and the need to belong and be accepted is a driver in nearly all humans, but they're just not going to show it. You can have the tough exterior. You can have the I don't care exterior. You can have the totally lost, I don't know where I fit exterior. But it will all come back down to one thing in how you treat them and walk with them. And if you're looking at this hierarchy of needs for young people, consider safety and the psychological barriers that can be there for young people. So to also consider the changes in that, in the young person, that there are different needs that will help people learn as well. And here what I'm talking about, the curiosity needs, understanding they have a curiosity as well. And if we're both having curiosity as the worker and the young person, there's a whole different interaction happening there, and language and dialogue happening. For you to be able to help somebody with the aesthetic needs of the world, even down to clothing, and to achieve something that they wanted to achieve for a while, and help them even change some of the behaviors that make problems for them in their lives, being able to help them make healthier choices and to understand why they want to do that and how it can and cannot benefit them. Because not all change is positive. Some change is very hard until you get there, until you're on the other side. How are you going to walk with these young people to do these things? And that goes back to your practices again. So in doing those things that are important, how do you determine what that young person needs? And that goes back to what Mario said, that deep listening, being there in that space. So to determine somebody's needs, they've got to be able to trust you first as well. They're not going to open up unless they trust you as well, as that space is safe. How are you improving communication between you and a group of young people as well? How do you keep them focused enough to be able to express emotions and feelings and needs and wants? Because that active listening, that space that you hold, actually helps that ability to do that. And it's about the way you question how you ask things. If you ask too much in one sentence, you won't get an answer for everything. It's too many compartments to break down in your mind. And often for many people, they'll only hear the beginning of the sentence and not the end of the sentence. So if you have 2 or 3 components to a sentence, you're only going to get probably 1 part or 2 if lucky. So you need to be careful the way, like, you're questioning. Think about breaking it down into smaller parts that can have a yes or a no, or if the answer is needing more than that, one item at a time for them to respond to often works better than trying to have 2 components to it. So just say that one of the questions could be that if you were encouraged to come back to school, how would you manage getting to school on time? When would you do your homework? And how would you get to school safely? There's 3 components of one sentence. It's too much to go back. If you ask one section at a time, you're going to get more responses. And you can build up your information from that. How do you present yourself when you're working with somebody? If you show no interest, if you're closed off, your body language will tell them. If you're having a bad day, that young person can pick up on that so quickly. And you be honest with them and tell them, yes, I am having a slow day, or it's a hard day for me. And let them be the one that brings in the empathy. And it's amazing what happens when it can actually turn around and they can pick up on your vibe because of the way your body language, the way that you're doing things. If you walk with openness, your body is quite open, your facial expressions, your non-verbals, they're all open. So that still says you can be in that space. That often helps other people sit at ease, makes people feel comfortable. If they're looking at you and you can see that you're paying attention and interested, it helps that dialogue, trustworthiness. How do you make yourselves credible? By using all those skills that we talked about before. With Mario's got his own box on screen now, all those skills are exactly what you can use for trustworthiness and credibility. Credibility is huge in all of our work with young people because they can pick somebody who's not interested in their work. They can pick you a mile away. Young people are very astute at reading people. They have a sense, they can see what's going. They're very observant. Most of the time, not all, but most are. And for the ones who are observant, who are not pretending that they've heard you, have actually been listening, they're just not putting in their order of priority. When you're working in a team, to create common beliefs and values is really important too. And having purpose for the group as well is really important. It's good to have goals for a group because everybody will have different ways of doing things that they can all contribute to create something even better. And your communication skills here are helping build relationships. So if you think about working on a project together with young people, and you might have a community project. To give them a sense of worth and participation. As an example, I'll use the memorial gardens that we created at the high school. And there was around 7 deaths of young people in 2 years from all different reasons. And there was a couple of high profile deaths in that as well, which really rocked the community. And the young people said, what can we do to have a space to be able to be respectful for those people? And we talked about a memorial, but we had no money. So then they said, how are we going to get the money? And I said, that's a good question. We can ask the school, but they're not going to have a lot of money for a memorial garden. So I said, well, how do we go and ask our community to have a space that anybody's welcome to come into? Because it wasn't just the school's loss and the young people's loss, it was the community's loss. So we actually took some representatives from that group who was wanting to do something to the local Lions group and talked about what they were wanting to achieve and how could they help them fundraise that. The ideas that were springing off these people were amazing because they had a common goal. They had somebody believed in what they wanted to achieve. And that was because of all these things we talked about, holding that space for them, being positive, being supportive, being honest and open. And that built the strong relationships, not just with the young people themselves, but with the team of youth workers that we had working together, as well as having mentors from university who were doing their work community placement. And this is over a period of 6 months' time, but they went out and they were working Saturdays doing sausage sizzles with the Lions Club. They were running pizza days at schools to try and raise funds. And they came up with some brilliant ideas of even, let's go to Bunnings and ask them, can they give us a hand with plants for free plants? And some of them were so bold in their thinking, yeah, we'll just ask them, well, they'll give it to us. It's a good cause. And I thought, oh, yes, there's a process here that we've got to follow. But yeah, miss, we can do this. We can do this. So we worked out how to meet with the manager from the Bunnings store. Can we talk to you about what we're working on? We need support. These young people from all different walks of life found a voice because they all had a common goal. They were teaching us how to be in that space at that time, for sure. And they were showing us what they had learned from us, and they were doing it to the point where all we had to do was rein in the excitement because they got a bit too cheeky with what they were asking for. Well, whilst you're at it, can we have a few of those as well? And a few of these, asking the manager of Bunnings, can we have a few extra things as well whilst you're there? But the reasons why they told that manager why we wanted the soil, the plants, the rocks, something to build the actual memorial stone upon and put a plaque on. They stood there with just unbelievable, going, wow, you people are amazing. Of course we'll help. And I mean, the sense of pride it gave them, the sense of belonging to something. And then once that project was finished, that sense of connection happens. And the communication becomes more honest and open. And those relationships become long-time relationships then. And these were young people who were not connecting at school at all. They were from all different walks, feeling very disengaged from different areas of their lives, especially from education. And we're talking, 15 to 17-year-olds here. So a difficult period of time for them as well. I learnt so much from them, but it also was dependent on how I presented as well. And you can build up the trustworthiness. You can do the active listening, and it does strengthen relationships because it's helping build trust. There is a video for you to watch. It's about 8 minutes. It's about the art of active listening. I'll let you do that at home. And it's quite interesting to see the different ways that they look at the art of listening and how body language is important in that as well. One of the things that can also make it hard for work in youth work is around structural barriers and those social issues that can make people pull away or cause barriers and disconnection. And these are the personal issues that young people might carry with them. And some of those personal issues, certainly around family circumstances, those relationships that have broken down, especially when the family unit has broken down themselves. Where is that person feeling nurtured and safe in that home environment? Domestic violence and alcohol and other drugs. When you don't have good leadership or parenting in your life, somebody who's safeguarding you, showing you how to lead and to walk forward. Different family circumstances can happen around illness as well. Different family circumstances can affect a young person's life and hope and self-esteem. We've had many people, young people, who have had very good family structures, but still felt like alienated in their own lives. Often a lot of people have less access to education. So we're supposed to have free education in the country, but there are still school fees to pay, uniforms to have, books, excursions, everything. That actually puts a barrier towards that. And then when they leave school and think about, I might want to do some study down the line, how do they get access to opportunities to study then? There are avenues, and that's another area that we need to be able to have information on as well. Are they pushed out of the family to go to work early? Is that family dependent on the young person going to work to help with the financial difficulties for the family as well? And that could also depend on culture as well. What are the expectations here? But if you haven't had the education, and you've had a lack of that, how much harder is it for you to find a job? Because you haven't got qualifications or you haven't passed your high school exams, or you never did a traineeship or different courses at high school. All these issues mount up as social structures that become barriers. This is where we can help with that. We can help with transport, access to transport. We can help with training, because we would have resources, be able to go out into the community and know what training organisations happening, how you might be able to use Centrelink support to be able to get free studies or minimal cost studies. But if somebody's faced with poverty and homelessness, there's another layer of complexity on top of that for that young person especially. And then finding stable youth housing as well, and stability and something that's safe. Often then creates, from poverty and homelessness, then creates social exclusion, the isolation that some young people feel because they feel so disadvantaged and hopeless. What's the point of caring? What's the point of going on? How can they maintain good health when they haven't got a safe space over the roof over their head and access to food and clothing and warmth and love? And often when young people have to live in youth sharing housing, they're still not gaining the nurturing relationships. And this is where youth work and group work can come in to help build communities around people, and their participation is crucial to help with their growth. Because that instability for them could be ongoing for years and years. And they layer up. All these issues here can layer one thing on top of the other. The lack of access to education leads to the lack of employment. Lack of understanding and access to different things can create poverty and homelessness. And then that discrimination and isolation and hopelessness. We can be a part of that change. In this time of globalization, with all its advantages, the poor are the most vulnerable to having their traditions, relationships, and knowledge and skills ignored and denigrated, and experiencing development with a great sense of trauma, loss, and social disconnectedness. That social disconnectedness is where they've lost hope. There's no faith or trust in something. They're not valued. That young person does not feel valued. Isolation happens. But you as a youth worker, what is your perspective on that? What can you do to help somebody be socially connected to their peers, or to a space, or to a group, or to an organisation? How can you support somebody have their traditions and their beliefs instead of having them ignored? So can somebody tell me what they think, how they could support somebody with their practices for social connectedness? How are you going to help young people connect with each other to create networks that they feel safe in being in, and so they can participate in things?
Create activities
Yes.
they can engage in, like basketball games, for example, or table tennis competitions, or indoor soccer or something like that, or or movies with bean bags or something.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
And I guess it's kind of the same as what Mario said, but like creating a program of similar interests, so then you can get people to come do things that they enjoy with other people that enjoy the same thing.
Yeah.
What do you think happens when they start doing something they enjoy? What do they
The,
forget about?
the problems, and they
Mm.
start relating, like being relatable to other people, and they
Mm.
find out that they're not the only ones going through the same thing.
Yes. And this is where you then start to build the space. This is where your work begins. This is where you hold the space for a group of people to be able to connect,
Mm.
to show all those people who are so different, we can all enjoy doing the one thing.
Mm.
That's how we interconnect. We're all different. We're all different sizes here, but we can
Mm.
all interconnect somehow on a purpose or a goal, an activity. And once you start doing that and find that they come back more and more because they feel safe in that space, they've enjoyed themselves, they felt connected. Self-esteem can start, then wanting more. This is where you can bring your skills in for part of community development in youth work and create a project or a goal, a common goal that they can work on together that will still be fun. And you give them ownership over that over time. This doesn't happen in a week. This is months and months of work. So you might be doing months and months of work of activities and getting the people coming back and doing the regular things. Then when you know they're coming back 4 and 5 times in a row, you're starting to see commitment here. And that's where you can take it and step it further.
Mm.
Let's have a goal or a project. Would you be interested in doing that? It could be about doing life skills and like what Scott was talking around the cooking. But how do you do a budget to go with that? And how do you create things around that? Could you be cooking and putting on a meal for somebody else who is less fortunate? And when you help them have skills to help somebody else, that takes a whole new layer. And you're taking them away from that problems and staying in a place of worry and stress and anxiety to start building enjoyment. And then purpose. When you have purpose, you feel like you're a part of something. Often when you don't have a purpose, like I said, where do I fit? Where do I belong? And how can you make change? So thinking outside of the box here on different activities to do to help them feel a part of a community can be important, and gaining their perspectives on what they want to do and what they want to be a part of as well. Many of our young people come with layers and layers of hurt, and they've been impacted by some very detrimental behaviors of families, parents, patterns of behavior of abuse, neglect, friends who have, could have been bullying, friends who have passed away, They might have lost family members that they were very close to, and they can't relate to other people. So they feel alienated. So then behavioural problems come. The teachers start saying that these young people are not doing anything in class. They're school refusal, they're aggressive, they're angry. Oh, they've got a right to be angry and hurt. But those stresses that come into their lives create complex issues that we need to be aware of. Because all those presenting behaviours that they come with, a lot of people will butt up against it. No, you're going to be doing what you're told. You're not going to act that way. And you'll often get people in society doing that. Once again, hold the space. Those behaviours will be there. They will challenge you. They will push you. But behind those behaviours are often all these things here that these complexities in their lives. Every person has a different story. And whether it's something small or something huge that's happened to them, it's important to them. That's what's important here to understand. When they start pulling away from being with people, when they're not looking after themselves, and you can tell when young people are sleep deprived and the not concentrating, they can't do their schoolwork, they can't concentrate on activities outside of school, or they're getting prepared for work. They might be in a work program, get work readiness program, and you'll notice behavioural changes. It's hard to know what's going on behind the scenes for them. And this is where our communication skills are crucial in trying to help them have a space to be able to share that. But that really impacts their lives. I've seen things turn around, but it takes a lot of trust for people, especially young people who feel as if they've been pushed away from their safety nets. And how do they build those up again? And this is where youth programs, activities, like Mario said, a game of basketball. It's about bouncing a ball, but it's bouncing it to each other. I know there was an activity one time we did, and we had a great big roll of string, and it was called the Web of Life. And one end of the ball just kept getting thrown to different people in the group, and it made like a great big spider web. And everybody had to hold on to the rope whenever it came to them. So everybody was holding on with both hands. So the rope would have come to them twice from different angles. And it was all these interconnecting pieces. And it was a great way to describe to them how we're all interconnected, but we're all different. But we all can meet somewhere in the web of life. And that analogy sort of started to open up to people to understand that, look at us sitting here. We're all different, but we're all holding onto a bit of rope and we're all connected somehow because we choose to. We choose to do that. You've just chosen to be a part of that connectiveness. So you're helping them bring that connective in when they're living with these horrible stresses in their lives. Just for somebody to be accepted because of their own gender choice and feel isolated by that. Choices around the way they want to dress, how they are, their actions. They can often get ostracized by society. But creating spaces where they can be equal with people, that's your challenge. You hold in your hands the ability to make somebody feel heard and validated and valued. You have a gift if you can help one person. If you can help more people along the way, awesome. If you can make the difference for one young person, it stays with you. It really does stay with you. I know in some of the young people I've worked with, they now present their children. Can you come and meet my child? And we're talking people that started off working from a high school situation around 15, who are now 30-year-olds out there bringing up their own families and trying and showing us that their structure that they understand that you need to have around a family is different to what they've come from. You just go, oh my gosh, how awesome is that? They took something in their lives. They took then the change. They did the work. It was a struggle for some, so many ups and downs. But when they come back later on and they go, thank you for being there for me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for encouraging me. Thank you for accepting me for who I am, for giving me an opportunity. That's when you know you've done a good job. You know you're doing a good job when they keep coming back to activities that you're doing or support services that you're working in. You can also make sure that you're encouraging that cultural beliefs as well. Make sure you're respecting that by your actions and activities that you do, that that you're perceiving behaviors that could be culturally affected, that you have a deeper understanding. So you are not going to make assumptions about somebody and stereotype them. Because when somebody can teach you about their own culture, that's another learning tool for you. And when you can walk with cultural safety and understanding and awareness and a wonderment, you're respecting that person. You can ask questions so you can understand what's going on. But that's about inquisitiveness. That's curiosity. I want to know. I'm interested. And if you open up that space for young people to be able to share culture as well, because difference doesn't mean isolation. Difference can also mean bonding of difference, of relationships and acceptance of difference. How do we create acceptance of difference when we work? Cultural safety is a great way to start as well. But don't forget, cultural is not just about race. It's about culture around what is cool to do, to wear, to be, to choices for your own self as well. Around identification, the identifying who you are, your own personal choices, where you sit, where you sit in society, where you fit and where you don't fit. Is that difference accepted, not accepted? I want to come back here and finish this up with tonight in saying that this work here, these qualities of youth work, are crucial. Unconditional, your empathy, your consistency, continuing to turn up to do your job, and doing all these things that you have shared here, the safety, the trustworthiness, listening deeply, advocacy skills, being open and honest, relatable, patient, empathetic, and holding the space for someone can help communication, consistency, help build stability, opens up lots of avenues because you're creating a supportive environment. That's all often need to be safe and felt a part of. And that's in your hands. Any questions from tonight? Vicky said just to let you know that she'll be unpacking the tasks in week 3. So she said, start on your task 1s, but she'll discuss that with you guys when she gets back. And I've been hearing some great things coming out of this class. So are there a lot of people still already working in the industry here, or in some community service work or support work? No?
Just in my church, I kind of like the youth night, where the youth come and stuff, and they have activities and stuff like this, barbecue, and you know, and so yeah, I'm helping the mate and stuff, and just talk to a bunch of kids. That's about it.
Wow. It all makes a difference, Mario.
Mm,
Creating space.
yep.
Okay, it's good. Oh, she's gone. Sammy's gone. Look, thank you for staying right to the end. Thank you for having me this week. Yeah, we had somebody off sick, so we had to shuffle. But thank you for inviting me in, and I wish you well with your studies.
Yep. Thanks, Helen. Appreciate it. Have a good
Thank
night.
you, Helen.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.